Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Talks Tamiya. I'm Craig, and I'm yet again joined by my good buddy Phil from Poor Boys RC. Phil, how are you doing?
Craig, I am fantastic, sir. How you doing today?
I am doing really well. Doing really well. I built a DTO4 recently, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and I had a fantastic time. And I know you've also built one of those recently and also enjoyed it, didn't you?
It was such a breath of fresh air building that DTO4. I loved it.
Well, off the back of that RC10 four-wheel drive, anything.
That's right. Yeah, that was yeah, two back-to-back builds, apples and oranges, we could say.
More stuff that we will get into during the course of the next however long. Let's hope we make an hour. We might do we did last time. We'll see how we go for time. We've got an action-packed show for you yet again. And I thought we'd kick off like we did last time with what's coming up in May from our good friends Tamiya. So Phil, we have got a Volkswagen Golf GTI 16 valve on the MB01 chassis. We've got the Audi R8 LMS 2008 on the TTO2. And then we just have two body sets. We've got the 911 GT3R and we've got the 306 Maxi as well. But I've also seen, and it's not on this list, but I've seen that 306 Maxi on the BT01 should also be out in May by the looks of it as well. Anything tickle your fancy there?
Well, a couple things do. I do love the bodies. Even, starting off with the Volkswagen GTI, I think that it looks great. I actually brought it up on my laptop here before we got started. I'm just staring at it right now, and it's beautiful. You know how I feel about the BT01 chassis, though. Anything, BT01 and MB01, they're not my favorite platforms out there, not my favorite chassis. But I think I just love the look of that body, and it's gonna fit a number of other chassis, I would think. BT01 being a little bit smaller, right? So maybe it'll fit the M chassis. That's why I look at it. I'm looking at it as the body being released, not the chassis with the body.
So I like the body shell on that. I like the wheels as well, though, and I wonder whether if you buy the body set for that Golf, you're not going to get the wheels because those wheels they have that sort of steel hubcap look that the Golf had back in the what has that been the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah, I like that one. My mom had one of those. I drove one of those shortly after I passed my driving test, but not the GTI. It was just a regular, I think it was like a 1.1 or something like that, a really sort of low powered one. But it's an iconic Golf chassis or Golf body set for me. I quite like it, but I've got an MB01 to build still, and I'm not sure I'm in the market for another one. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. I know what you mean. I think once you build it, you'll most likely be content with just the one.
And a whole bag of shims, right?
And a lot of shims and a lot of patience, and yeah. Hey, listen, some guys said they figured it out. They could make it work. So I'm sure, it's been out for what, a year and a half now or so.
Yes.
So, I'm sure somebody's figured out how to tighten it up a little bit. And there's got to be some updated videos available on YouTube to watch and learn more about. But yeah, I think just having a chassis that, where the back of it becomes the front, depending on how you configure it, it just opens the door to a lot of slop. And that was my experience with the chassis. It was just a difficult car to drive straight. And therefore, it was not something that I wanted to, hang on to in the collection. Moved it on to someone else. I think we actually raffled that one off. Someone out there loves it, so that's awesome. As far as this release, it looks great, but I know what the performance is going to be, and it's not for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to throw that body on a different chassis would be pretty cool.
It should fit the MF01X. It'll probably go on there.
Yeah.
It'd probably go on any of the MO5, the MO7, MO8. I would imagine it'll fit all those chassis if you wanted it to.
Yeah, that might be a better spot for it. That is an awesome body. It looks great. You're right. I do like the way the wheels look too. And I think it's a relatable car. It was just like, it was a car back in the 80s and 90s that everybody seemed to have. A lot of kids in my high school would have, learned how to drive on those cars. They were, we had all the gas models out here in Canada, not too many of the diesels, certainly not a lot of the GTIs, but it was a very common car. You could get a lot of miles out of those cars. I remember a lot of people, 300,000-400,000 kilometers on there, and
Yeah.
the piston rings, like the oil ring, would be decomposed and thing would be burning oil like crazy. But that's what we did back then, right? It was a different time.
Those things were built to last. They were built to last, just like our Tamiyas were built to last. Or certainly the ones from the 80s were that are still rocking and rolling these days, right?
That's right.
So, talking about old Tamiyas, I did a video last week on a 50 years of Tamiya book that I picked up from Japan, and it was a proper walk down memory lane. Turning the pages on that, it took me back instantly to all those old Tamiya guidebooks from the 1980s and flicking through it, and it amazed me the wall of history that Tamiya RC has. It just goes on forever. Is there anything that, I mean, firstly, Phil, have you considered picking up those books in the past? Are they available to you in the North American market at all?
Yeah, they do come up every now and then, but they tend to be priced very high from anywhere I've been able to find anyway. We're looking at, 50, 60, 70 US dollars
Wow.
oftentimes. And I'm in Canada, right? So then by the time you convert it and you ship it, I could be over $100 Canadian for one of those books. So it's just a little more than I want to spend. But that being said, growing up in the 80s and 90s again, like my best friend at the time, his brother had one. I forget which year it was, but it would have been like a mid to late 80s. And, I can't even tell you how many sleepover nights we'd have. And we'd be going through that manual or going through that book,
Absolutely.
and we would dream up stories of the cars. Tamiya did such an amazing job of just making just with their box art alone. And kids had different. We had imagination, like a lot of imagination back then, right? We didn't have all the technology that kids have today. So we would stay up late at night and kind of make up stories of like the Clodbuster, what it could do, and how it would crush a hot shot or whatever, right? Kids, our minds were very creative and imaginative back in those days, and man, nothing but great memories. That's why I love those videos that you do. When you do them, it's like, because you've just got such a great voice for it too. So it's like, it's nice to kind of go through them, just kind of, yeah. Personally, I love watching those videos of yours.
I'll keep loving them. So I've got a whole stack of those guidebooks that I've picked up over the last sort of 2 or 3 years that are waiting for me to do for future videos on as well. I think they're brilliant. I just wish Tamiya would put out some English content with those books because they are beautiful. They're beautiful coffee table books. Mine are kept sort of downstairs in the lounge, and if anyone comes over, they pick up. And, oh, what's this? And it starts a conversation. The problem is I have to whip out Google Translate to be able to go through. Oh, this is this, and this is what that says. And it'd be just nice to have some English versions of them, and I do think they'd sell well. Certainly think they'd sell well through the hobby stores in the UK and in Europe. Certainly going on the number of views and the comments that I've had on the videos that I've done with them, and they absolutely would sell well out in North America. I absolutely think they would have a market for them. But I suppose it costs a whole ton of money, and it's really hard to publish those types of things. There must be a lot of content to translate.
Yeah, and what I noticed was on your most recent video, the 50th anniversary, like that book was it just me, or was that like kind of a higher end sort of finished book versus some of the other annual catalogs they would put out, which were would tend to be a bit smaller, kind of a paperback, not quite as high end of a finish.
It was definitely a higher end, higher quality publication. Yeah, it was done. They
Yeah.
call them like magazine books. They call them mooks out in Japan, and it definitely has a better quality to it than the catalogs, the regular catalogs do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I do have a catalog or two, but I found them on Marketplace kind of thing locally, and they have English translations in them, I believe. I'm going off memory. I'm pretty sure they have English translations in them. But the big one you had, I noticed, was 100% Japanese.
Yeah, so they did two others that I picked up. They did a volume one and a volume two of the Tamiya RC Museum content. The volume one takes you through the first 100, and volume two, I don't think it quite picks up the second 100, but it was almost like another decade of RC cars and tanks and stuff. But
Okay.
they were all in Japanese as well. But they were like every car had a whole page. So they were really, and they had lots of different photographs. Whereas the 50-year celebration was just, for most part, it was just here's the car and here's some text about what was special about it. But what was nice about that one is it had all the product numbers in it, and it had all of the timeline of when they were released. So it's like almost like a 50-year Bible. And then when you got to the back, it had pretty much every spare part and hop up that's ever existed for every car, right from the very first part number to the last number.
That's crazy. That's so cool.
It is, and that's why I'm really pleased I picked it up. But I just think there's a market out there for it. So Tamiya, if you're listening, get that book out there into translate into English and get it out into the worldwide market. I think you'd make a fortune.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. How many of us would love to have that? I mean, it would be so cool to have. I like your idea of having it as like a coffee table kind of a thing because as you know, as we grow and we mature and it's doing what we're doing, not everyone is into it. Not all, 40, 50-year-old guys are into this thing yet, right? So it is a neat conversation starter. When people look back at the history, I mean, a lot of people, let's face it, wouldn't know who Tamiya is. So they would look back at the history of these cars and yeah, what a great way to have a great conversation with people and then also maybe convince them to get into the hobby as well.
I am finding, Phil, that a lot of the people I talk to have the sort of the nostalgia hit. They think back to when they were kids, and you'd be surprised how many people had a grasshopper or a hornet or a frog or a lunchbox or a midnight pumpkin or something that they could look back and relate to when they hear about. Oh, there are so many of them. But like, oh, I didn't realize that you could still get those. Didn't realize Tamiya was still a thing or Kyosho was still a thing. There's like some of the dads at school, and they're digging things out of their attics and asking me about them now because the conversation gets started and people start to realize you've got this quite interesting and unique hobby, and then they realize that actually they'd be interested in doing a bit of that as well. So they want to start repairing. I mean, I was chatting to one of the guys at school, and he dug his old madcap out of his loft that's been up there for 30 something years and was like, I think I'm going to repair this and get it running again. And I wonder how many RC cars are still in boxes in attics or get back at garages and stuff where people just haven't got to them yet.
There's got to be so many, so many. If you could rekindle that love that these guys and girls would have had back in the day for these cars, you can rekindle that and get them back into it. It'd be incredible.
Well, we'll keep working our magic and doing our things, and maybe the YouTube algorithms will be kind enough to pass our wonderful videos on to all those people that got their beat up Dynastorms in their garages that they can get out and send to us for free, right?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
So, the guidebook, or sorry, the Tamiya book, the 50 Years of Tamiya, finished on the back page with a lovely picture of the DTO4, and we started it a bit earlier on. Now we've both built DTO4s over the last couple of weeks, haven't we?
We sure
And
have.
how did you find it?
It was awesome. I loved it. I loved the look of the DTO4 right from the get-go when we saw it released at the 2025 Nuremberg Toy Fair. And it's different. I like that Tamiya sticks their neck out sometimes and does some wacky things. This is definitely a different buggy. Just with the way the body panels are designed, this kind of modular bolt-on from the outside, exo cage. Just it's very, very funky. And then building it, it was just a silky smooth build experience. Granted, I'm also coming off of building an RC10 four-wheel drive, which we want to talk about, maybe not, because that's a bit of a sore subject for some people. But let's just say it was an apples and oranges experience because the and the people that love it for what it is, and it's not a Tamiya build. Whereas a Tamiya, you go just instruction by instruction. You've got the beautiful legend right beside your manual. You've got this nice legend where all your screws are 1-to-1 scale. So if you're not sure if it's this one or that one, you just lay it right on top, and everything just goes together buttery smooth, and it works beautifully out of the box. It looks cool. It's got a variety of options that build options, including wheelbase and pinion size variances, things like that, different colored decals that it comes with. So it's just such a great kit, and it's not expensive, which I love. I love that. I love the RC segment of not super expensive, look cool, fun, bang for the buck cars, and I think the DTO4 checks all of those boxes.
I absolutely agree with you. And I built mine up alongside a DT Sand Viper. And do you know what? I've done that twice now. I built two RCs at the same time, and I'm never doing it again. It is hard work remembering what goes where and which pack you've opened or which screw. And if you get it mixed up, it's the end. You have to start unpicking things and remembering what bags stuff came out of. It was a nightmare. But what I loved building it up was seeing how much subtle changes Tamiya have made to that DTO4 to make it a better buggy. the modular design of the front and the rear stays. I thought that was genius, absolute genius.
Yeah, I do like the fact that the front end as well. You've got the different sort of front end setups where if you have the short wheelbase like I went with, you've got a fixed upper arm. But if you go with the longer wheelbase, now you've got an adjustable turnbuckle where you can
Yes,
adjust you can adjust your camber. So it's neat. Like in some respects, like you need to have adjustable turnbuckles to have a quote unquote race quality vehicle. And this isn't a race car. This isn't modern race cars of the day, but it can still hang on a track and it can still be a lot of fun on a track. And if you had a spec class of these, you would have a really, really fun and affordable spec class where you can now adjust them a little bit to the track. You can go short wheelbase or long, um, and just have a blast racing.
I do. I mean, I think that is definitely the aim for Tamiya over in Japan, is they'll have a race class for this. And you're right, there'll be people running long wheelbase, there'll be people running short, they'll be changing the setup for the track, they'll be altering the camber, they'll be giving it a bit more toe in and out, they'll be playing around with that setup for the track that they're on. What more do you want? What more do you need?
That's it.
Now,
That's it.
what I
I think
haven't. Go on.
Sorry, buddy. I was just going to say, I think some people really want a pure race bred machine, and if that's what you're after, the DTO4 is not going to ever be that. But if you want something that's affordable, that just looks cool and can still hang on a track and have put some good tires on there, set up your speed controller and your motor to your track conditions, your wheelbase, your suspension, and you're going to have a lot of fun, and it's going to get around really well.
I think so. I think a stock class, you see, where everyone's running the same gear, and it's all about tuning the car and getting the best out of the chassis. I think they probably make for a more entertaining and exciting race than one where you've got people just running the highest spec that they could possibly have in a vehicle. I think this can make for some really interesting RC racing and fun times. But we don't tend to see. I mean, there's not many RC buggy tracks around, unfortunately, and where they are, they're not easy for me to get to. But even if I was able to these days, they're not running stock classes like these sort of Tamiyas. But out in Japan, it seems to be quite popular still. And for that reason that you said a minute ago, it's the bang for your buck. It makes it affordable. It's a great entry point. It's a great place for people to get stuck into and learn and enjoy the hobby, as we did back in the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's still a market for it because, with any hobby, you can go crazy. I mean, you can be into quilting, and you can spend a lot of money on yarn. It doesn't matter what it is. You can spend a lot of money in any hobby. And I've had, as a collector and as a very avid RC enthusiast, I've had many friends come by and see my collection and say, hey, I want to get into this. And by the time you add up your initial build costs on a fresh build, so you buy like a builder kit plus a battery, a charger, radio, tools, paint, all the the whole kit and caboodle, it adds up quite a bit. So therefore that $700 race buggy is, by the time you've added all the additional gear that you need to get it up and running and all the race quality race spec equipment, you can be up to $1,200, $1,500, $2,000. It can be quite the investment. Whereas you can get something like this, a DTO4, put a budget radio in it, a cheap Fly Sky radio, budget lipo, and you can be completely set up for $500 right out of the gate and be rocking and rolling. And that is, I think, really important in the context of getting new people into the hobby, because it doesn't have to break the bank to get into the hobby and have something fun that you can just bash around with, zip around your parking lot, in front of the house, whatever, or take it on a track, put some nice tires on it, take it on a track and zip around and have fun.
Well, my DTO4 will be out on the Orchard Raceway in the coming weeks. The Orchard's had its first maintenance session of the spring. The molehills have gone, and I have a new fresh layer of dirt down on the track at the top section. So
Nice.
It's nearly ready for a run. And I've decided that the DTO2 and the DTO4 are going to have a bit of an early season head-to-head out on the track. And we'll see which one of those two is better.
That'll be awesome. That'll make for some good viewing, because
I can't wait.
Yeah. Did you go short or long wheelbase on yours?
I went short, so it was very, very similar to the DTO2. because the DTO3 is slightly longer, and I actually think that will be more comparable to the long wheelbase.
Yes,
And
yeah.
I'm very tempted to get another DTO4 just to put it into the long wheelbase. So I've got one that's long and one that's short. But that's a project for another day. I don't know if I want to build another one straight away. But do you know what I don't like about it? I don't like the body panels. Now, I like the look of them. I just don't like the way they cover up all the electronics.
Yeah, yeah, I hear what you're saying there. Yeah, because yeah, your ESC and your receiver are really tucked in into those kind of side pods, and once you put your body panel over top, it's you really don't have any access to it without removing those side panels again.
No, and it's really frustrating when you put it all together and then realize you forgot to connect up the receiver to the ESC.
Are you speaking from experience, maybe?
I may well be speaking from a bit of experience. Yeah, I had to undo the whole thing. And the wiring, I put the wires, there was a lovely, nice little track down the side for the servo wire. So that tucked neatly in and it was all beautiful. But I couldn't, the ESC wire wasn't long enough to go around the front. So I had to go around the back, and that just doesn't look as neat. So there were a couple of little things that bugged me like that. But on the whole, I think it's a superb little buggy. I think Tamiya have done a great job. I think it will be very popular. And I can't wait to see how it goes around the track. And you've driven yours, haven't you? You did a video I saw the other day where you took yours out on the beach, didn't you, and gave it a rip?
Yeah, yeah, I took it out on the beach, and it was kind of a lower tide day, but the sand, we've got like a very kind of a coarse sand out at that beach in particular. So it was awesome out there. It was nice because the tide was out, the sand was still kind of wet enough, and I build mine with the bushings. If I know I'm going to be running it on the beach, I'll build mine with the kit supplied bushings instead of putting bearings in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm not worried about rust or anything like that. And my cars don't get a ton of miles on them anyway, so I don't mind using the bushings on occasion. And yeah, but it was just perfect. It wasn't crazy fast. Probably, felt like it was in that low 20-mile-per-hour bracket, 22 miles per hour. I used the 17 tooth pinion that it came with. You could also run a 19 if you wanted a little more top end, but it zipped around well. It looked really great. I went with some bright colors on my driver, so it was a nice sunny day too, so the colors were really popping. And it was just a fun drive, put a big smile on my face, and that's what these things are supposed to do.
Absolutely. Tamiya, good job on the DTO4. It passes the OAG and the Poor Boys RC seal of approval.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. There you go. You heard it here first.
Home run.
So, talking about home runs, I told you on the last podcast that it would be your turn to pick the Hero Tamiya for this month's podcast. So, I hope you've given it some thought. What would you like to put in as your 10 out of 10 Tamiya Hero for this month?
The Tamiya Hero for this month. Yeah, I mean, it was a quick no-brainer selection for me. And I had to go with the CW chassis, or as I like to, my favorite version of it, which would be the Midnight Pumpkin.
Yes, great choice. Great
Yes, sir.
choice.
My
So,
first RC, still my favorite. It's more, I don't think they've ever had to re-release it because they just keep making them. They don't stop because they keep selling. They just don't ever stop selling. They're fun. They look cool. They can wheelie for days. They've got absolutely horrible suspension out of the box, so they bounce around and do wacky things. A bulletproof gearbox that has such a distinctive whine sound to it that we've all just kind of grown to know and love, and just so much personality. Just such a great personality, fun RC car.
and that was your first ever RC, was the Midnight Pumpkin.
My first ever hobby grade. I had some before that, but they were, the Radio Shack and the Sears ones that ran off of AA batteries, which was, I mean, we grew up very poor. That's where the name Poor Boys RC actually came from. We didn't have any money growing up. And so, I was fortunate to get what I did get, and I was
Yeah.
very happy with those. But, getting a job, when I was a kid, just even delivering papers and picking apples, I was able to get a Midnight Pumpkin eventually. So to have that pumpkin and to be able to just have that experience, like something like a 540 Mabuchi motor by today's standards is not a fast motor. But back then it was. Back then you were, again, running off usually 6 or 8 AA batteries on a tiny little motor.
Yeah.
So to see a CW01, just you hit the gas and to see it just wheelie down the street the whole way, it was a jaw-dropping moment. Like, I still, like, that was 30 something years ago, and I still can't forget it.
Do you know what, a 540 silver can is plenty fast enough when it's in a CW01, isn't it?
Exactly.
So I didn't experience a lunchbox until I built one getting back into the hobby. And I idolized them as a kid. I really wanted one. But we were like you, we couldn't have them. So it was just more flicking through the guidebooks, seeing them. Oh, I always want one of those. I'd always get one of those and never did. So when it got to the point of building a car up that I could share with Mini OAG, I picked the lunchbox to start with because it's that blank canvas. It's fun, but the body shell is a blank canvas for me. And you can paint it any color, you can put any design on it you want, you can just have a load of fun with it. And yes, the whole wheelie nature of it, but it just brings a smile to anyone's face that has to go with one of those things. It just instantly makes you feel like a kid again and makes you want to have fun. And I think that's what's so good about the CW01 show.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think the lunchbox over time, the lunchbox seems to be the most popular of the body options on a CW01. Personally, I like the Midnight Pumpkin more. It's just more my taste. My wife actually has a lunchbox though. It was the first hobby grade RC car that she ever got. And we met over 10 years ago and I said, you got to drive one of these things. And I let her drive the pumpkin and she loved it right away. So she got the lunchbox. Like you say, I mean, how many decades later you can buy wraps for the lunchbox bodies now, and you've seen so many people do so many creative and cool things with these platforms. And now with 3D printing and people just selling stuff on eBay, carbon fiber chassis, you've got, yeah, I mean, you can really go bananas on one of these now, and you can spend a lot of money. And aluminum chassis, carbon fiber, whatever, proper front end suspension kits, oil filled shocks, brushless setups. Like you can go bananas on one now, and but it's I still got to say I've got one that I've gone bananas on. I mean, I've completely upgraded everything you possibly upgrade on it, and I love it. But I still have a stock one because the stock is still just so much fun driving around a stock CW01. They're great.
They certainly are. Now, I've got a confession to make to you. I also really liked the Midnight Pumpkin, and I got myself one, and I must have got through about 4 sets of body post mounts on it.
Yeah.
I just had enough. I got rid of it, and I kept the chassis. I got rid of the body shell, and I put a lunchbox body shell on top of it, because I just those mounts, those top mounts, are just so fragile. Someone said to me, you can get like aluminium, like metal ones that go on the top that are apparently a lot more robust. But I never got to that point. I just broke so many of them. I just decided it was never going to hold up out in the garden, jumping around and having fun with it. Especially when I, get the nephews round and they all want to play around with the CW01s. There's just no way it's ever going to survive.
Yeah, that's very true. That was a big pain point for me as a kid too. I remember breaking those body posts all the time, then crazy gluing them, and then breaking them off again and gluing them again. It's just how it was. The lunchbox just seems to be a lot more. The body posts seem to last because they go horizontally out the side of the body, whereas the pumpkin, they stick up vertically. And just the way they're designed, they just stick up too high. And yeah, it's pretty fragile plastic with that ABS body on there. And yeah, you roll over once and it seems like they break. I did put the alloy upgrade body mounts on my modded Midnight Pumpkin. And I think I put them on like, honestly, 7, 8, 9 years ago. They've held up great. Some people complain that if you go alloy body mount, that it'll break at the chassis. I haven't experienced that myself. And I mean, the first speedrun challenge we ever did, we used CW01s. So, I mean, that thing's crashed at, 45, 50 miles per hour. And those body mounts of the chassis have held up. So I can attest to the strength of them.
No better product review and product test than a Poor Boys speedrun challenge, of course. If your product holds up in that, it's a good product.
That's right. Yeah, making slow cars go fast. It's always an eye-opening experience every
Absolutely.
year. Yeah.
Absolutely. So CW01 platform, what a great addition to our Tamiya Heroes. We'll pick another one for next month. I believe it's my turn next, so I'll have to get my thinking cap on.
That's it. Looking forward to what you come up with.
So, from Tamiya Heroes to not so much Tamiya Heroes, I want to talk about the TD platform, the TD2 and the TD. And it looks from Tamiya's side, I mean, they cleared those out in the UK. I think they cleared them out in North America as well. They've had a sort of a sell off of that chassis, and it's still in the catalog. It still looks like it's in the lineup somewhere, but it's not being pushed at all. And I wanted to sort of chat a little bit about what we think went wrong there. Perhaps Tamiya could have done differently to improve that platform and the way that it was seen in the marketplace.
Great conversation starter, because that was a big swing and a big miss, I think, from Tamiya. And it's really too bad because, they invested money into, obviously, like, retooling, creating a whole new chassis, the inboard shocks in the front. I think that's got to be complicated sort of suspension setup to come up with and design, make it all work. Real quick, before we dive into all the nuts and bolts of it, I think first of all, the TD4 came out first, and it had kind of that funky look with like the fender flares, kind of that Dodge Prowler thing, with the open ends and big kind of, not flares, but like fenders that are on the wheel.
Yeah.
So it had a funky look that I think created some division with people right away. Personally, I loved it. I absolutely loved the look of it. And then when you got it, it underperformed, and it underperformed because you couldn't put it together right. I tried building mine. I had one donated to the channel from the RCL. Shout out to the RCL if you're still listening. And great guy. And the unfortunate part was that the ball diffs, they used a plastic T-nut in the ball diff.
Disaster.
And yeah, you know what? For most people, myself included, that would strip out. If not during your first run, they would strip during assembly, like mine did. And that was, any RC car that you buy, you put together, and it doesn't work out of the box, I consider those cars failures. It's got to work out of the box. So that was the biggest issue I had. Then, other people had problems with the front CVDs falling out, and they didn't like how the battery fit. It is tough to get the batteries in and out. So I think some issues kind of piled up on top of just the fact that I think it was a new release. It looked funky. People were kind of questioning that, and then it didn't go together properly. And I think right from there, it was doomed. And here we are a couple of years later, it's discontinued. And it's really tragic because they look cool. When you get them working right, they drive beautifully. There was a lot of potential there, and it's just kind of gone now. It's kind of sad.
So I was flicking through that 50-year book, and it dawned on me that the TD chassis were the first new buggy, like higher end buggy, that had come from Tamiya since the DB01 platform. So
Wow.
it had been a massive amount of time where they'd done the DTO3 in that time, and they'd sort of skirted with some other buggies, but they'd not done a really sort of higher end buggy since that DB01, DN01, the Haka or whatever it's called. So it was a long time. And yes, you're right. They must have invested some money in that. They must have spent some time developing it. Obviously, we all first saw the TD4, and I did not like I like the look of it. I didn't like the battery thing. The whole battery pack thing would just look like a nightmare for me. And that was what put me off it. And then I started hearing about the problems with the diffs and the CVDs. And yes, the battery in and out was a problem. And people didn't like the look of it and were complaining about the look and the design and the naming convention. And all that stuff just seemed to create such a negative mindset about it that it put me off. And then the TD2 got announced. And I loved the look of that one. That just, to me, it looked like an F1 inspired car. I just liked the way it looked. And I thought, forget it. I'm going to get one of those. And interestingly, the RC Alf provided me with one of those. So shout out again to the RC Alf. I hope he's listening. And I built that one up, and I really enjoyed the build on that, except for the diff. I'd never built a ball diff until I built that one. But mine still has that plastic nut in it. I didn't go back and open it back up and change it to the metal, the alloy one. Even though I have it, I didn't need to. It held together. And touch wood, it's still holding together now. And the way that drives and the way it handles is really, really nice. And therefore, it got me thinking about the TD4 again. And I do want to give the TD4, because I think if I get it out on the track, I think it will actually be really good. All the issues aside, I think it will be really good.
It handles beautifully. Just thinking about it again, I think there's not a lot of room for an ESC in there either. That was, I think, one of the downsides a lot of people complained about with that chassis. It's pretty limited with space
Yeah.
for electronics and everything, but it handles so nice. And it, like, I remember we had like a snowfall out here, which is kind of rare, and it all started melting away. And I went to the local high school here on a Saturday and built some big ramps out of the snow, and I drove it around, and it handles great. It took some big jumps nicely. It really is. It's such a missed opportunity. I think another element that contributed to its failure was the fact that they to give it a TD4 name is one thing, but to give it the Avante name was,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a bit of a fail too, because Avante is still arguably the nicest Tamiya four-wheel drive buggy that they have. In my opinion, it is the nicest. People could argue that, say there's some others, but overall construction, the parts usage, the material usage, everything, like, it is the nicest RC car I've ever built. You just stare at it. It's this next level of building experience. And so I think when they named the TD4 the Avante, it was like this is going to be special. This will be next level. And yeah, plastic T-nut, man. Why did you cheap out with the plastic T-nut? What were you guys thinking? Come on, you guys put them together too. You know they strip. Come on, what are you doing?
Yeah, they wanted
And
to
it
say
was
that. They wanted to say the hop up. That's the reality of it. That's why they had that part as a hop up, because they knew people were going to buy the hop up.
That's right. And I'll tell you, like, I'm a loyal Tamiya guy, but I was so ticked off. I mean, it's brand new kit, super excited to build it, and there's nothing worse than that feeling of just that when the plastic strips. And I'm going so gently because I know, I'm anticipating something going wrong, and boom, you feel that slip, and it's like, guys, all you had to do was put the aluminum T-nut in here, and yeah, it was a cost-cutting measure, and it looked really bad on them, and hopefully they learn from it and don't do it again.
But that wouldn't have got past the naming convention. It wouldn't have got past the looks of the buggy that people didn't gel with when it first came out. It wouldn't have got over those issues, unfortunately. And I just think maybe the negativity just hindered it. It slowed the sales. It meant that people weren't as keen to pick it up. Yeah, I've picked up a TD2. I was really happy with. I do have a TD4 kit that I picked up at a decent price. I was very happy with the price I paid for it, because it was, at least £100 less than when it first came out, if not more. And then I was on eBay a couple of weeks ago, and there was somebody selling a TD4, but they had done it in the style of a super hot shot.
Oh, cool.
The body shell on it looks like a super shot, yeah? And there's no fenders, and they've changed the colours of the wheels, and they put some hop-ups on it, and this thing just looks, it's got the whole metal roof that you see on a hot shot on it. It just looks fantastic, and it's got a rear wing, and it is super sexy. And it cost me, I want to say like £100 to buy this TD4, which I thought was ridiculous given how much those things were brand new. And everyone I've spoken to about it, Phil, tells me that it will drive fantastically. You'll have an absolute blast with it out on the track. It'll be a really high performer on the Orchard Raceway season, and I just hope that Tamiya give that chassis another go.
It will drive beautifully. I mean, I've got great memories of driving mine. Another thing you might want to consider with yours is, again, since there's such a limited amount of space under the hood, I ended up going with a 2-in-1 brushless setup on mine, where like the motor and the ESC are all one. I think it was a Dynamite, a 2-in-1 brushless motor ESC combo. It was tight. The motor was just a little bit bigger than a standard 540, but I was able to get it in there, and now my ESC is integrated into the motor, so I don't have to worry about that space under the hood. That was a cool setup for that car. It just, I think it was a 3,300 kV or something like that. So with a 2S Max, so you're not going to get into like the 50, 70 miles an hour with it. It's going to, max out at probably 28 to 32 miles per hour, something like that. But it was nice and smooth, and the car drove beautifully. And yeah, it's a real shame that it just flopped like it did.
Do you think Tamiya could save the chassis? Do you think they could re-release it and change it in some way to make it more popular?
In my opinion, if they released it again and gave it some more nods to the original Avante. For example, I think the wheels were a big letdown on that kit as well, because they just use that same recycled wheel that's on every other Tamiya kit. And the Avante, the original Avante, has those very special, very unique camlock wheels. I'm not saying they have to go to a camlock, but even a faux camlock or just something different, because Avante is the Cadillac of the, you know what I mean? It's the luxury car of the brand. It did not deserve to have recycled wheels on it, that are on every other budget car. I think that was a big swing and a miss too. So if they were to rebrand it, maybe come out with like maybe a different body design, some different wheels on it, really kind of spec it out to something special, I think it may see a bit of a resurgence, maybe.
So like a TD4R with a different body shell, get rid of the fenders, do something different with it, and pump it back out. I would like that. I'd like to see Tamiya not abandon it, because I like the lay down shocks. I think that was a great design. I like the fact that you can do the window on the on the body, and you can see them working inside. I think all that was super cool, and it was nice to see them doing something completely different and not just building another standard buggy again. So here's hoping that Tamiya find a way of putting that back out and making people like it again. So if nothing else, Phil, just so I've got hop-ups and spare parts, I can still get into the future, because it's nothing worse than buying a modern buggy and then seeing it discontinued 2 or 3 years later.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully they can. Hopefully they can bring it back somehow. I'm just trying to think if they've ever done that in the past. Can you think of a time they've had kind of a failed release and then revitalized it a couple years later and had it become successful?
No, I'm struggling.
Yeah, me too. I'm trying to think of, maybe like the Mitsubishi Montero, because that was part of the CW01 world. I don't think they sold well, but then they kind of re-released it a year or two ago with like the smaller wheels, and I still don't think it was very popular again. But
No, I can't think of anything where they released it, it bombed, and then they came back with something the same thing
yeah,
again. But because this one would need it to be slightly changed. They'd have to put that alloy nut in there and get that in as standard. It would be nice for them to change the wheels and use different wheels on it that are a bit more generic. Not generic, but you could just get tires that fit from any manufacturer. You haven't got to get those specific Tamiya tires to fit those specific Tamiya wheels. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It'd be nice for them just to be a bit more. I don't know. Let's see what they do. Let's see what they do. So, on to other. I thought we'd do other RC news, Phil, because I know you're dying to tell me about the RC10 four-wheel drive that you really enjoyed building.
Oh boy, what a pleasure.
So unlike our Tamiya kits that go together really, really nicely, you recently treated yourself to a RC10 four-wheel drive, which I think was a great concept idea, by the way. I think that was great. But it was not as smooth going as perhaps you would like it to have been.
That's putting it very kindly. Very well said. Yeah, and after I released a video where I shared my opinions on the build, and in my opinion, it was an absolutely miserable build. I did not enjoy it. I spent 3 days on it, having to go back and take things apart, make this fit, make that fit, try and make the rear CVDs not fall out, blah blah blah. So that, to me, that's not fun. And I'll say this, a bunch of viewers came to my channel and left comments on these videos that I made, and responded very uniformly in the sense of saying that, hey, this is how it was. This is what we do with race cars. Have you ever built a Schumacher? They're way worse. And no, I haven't built a Schumacher. So
Well,
it did
I
open
can
my
tell
eyes
you,
to, like, what's that?
I can tell you that the Cougar, when I built the Cougar, I had that exact same experience. It was like it just would
Really?
not go together for me, and I spent hours rebuilding and undoing and rebuilding and undoing that car, trying to get it to do what I wanted it to do out of the box, and it just would not happen.
Yeah, see, like, I don't find that fun. That's me. Okay. So if you're a racer and you like doing this kind of stuff, then all the more power to you. I'm not a hardcore racer. I thought that the RC10 four-wheel drive would be a little more of like a polished product. And I've watched the subsequent videos that Team Associated's released, talking about the rear CVAs falling out or CVDs falling out, and it's like, well, the shocks are too long. I don't know. Are they? Like, why would I just doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you build a shock and then have to shorten it? Or why would you design a car to run off a certain style of shock and then have to shorten it significantly? And I'm talking so significantly, and no one's talked about this in the videos, but if you were to actually droop the back shocks far enough so that your dog bones don't fall out or your CVAs don't fall out, the back end of the car sits significantly lower than the front of the car, which you don't want. Not only does it look silly, it's not going to drive right. So, like, I've been in the hobby for 40 years now. I've built a lot of cars, and I can say this one will go down in history as the most miserable build I've ever had. I'm not eager to drive it because it didn't feel like it was going to hold together, if that makes sense. Like, it kind of felt like it probably was a prototype from the 80s again, where they're kind of like, all right, let's stick a transmission here, run a belt. Oh, that belt off this car seemed to fit. Okay, run it for a few laps and see what happens. If that's what you're doing, you work for Team Associated, then all good. But if you're the end user like I am, and you're just a guy that wants to build a kit, drive it, enjoy it, then I don't think this is a kit for you, because it requires a lot of messing around to make it work. It's not cheap. If and when parts break, I bet they're not going to be cheap or in abundance. It's just not the most fun. Far from it.
I can reflect on my time with the Cougar Classic, and it sounds like we had a similar experience. The only difference is the Cougar Classic was a proven race car from back in the day. Yeah, so it was Schumacher putting out the same chassis, the same kit with the same finicky nature of the build as they did before for people to experience it today. And it felt like a really quality car. It felt like a really quality bit of kit. It was hard work putting it together, but when it went together and it got it working, it was beautiful. It was really, really nice. But I don't have that time to finesse the car in the same way that others enjoy doing that in the hobby. They enjoy tinkering and getting the car set up just right and having all that adjustability. I need something that's a little bit more plug and play. I don't have that time to be, taking it out on the track, doing a few laps. Oh, it's not quite right. Get it back in and tweak and change. And I wish I had that time, but I don't. The difference, though, is that RC10 four-wheel drive was a prototype. It was not a production car, was it? And therefore, you've got those design issues that would have come back in the day. And I think the bit that I would find frustrating had I spent that amount of money on that model is that Team Associated didn't go to the extra step of saying, let's make this into the production model that we would have put out if we'd have put it out back in the day. Let's fix those problems and make it work out of the box properly so people can enjoy it in the way that we intend it to be enjoyed.
And you're totally right. And it's almost as though they did kind of take a step into making it more of a 21st generation version of the 80s prototype. But these are also decisions they made that are confusing to the end user. You've got a mishmash of metric and standard hardware. So Team Associated was standard forever. Apparently they've gone to metric on their kits since, like, I don't know, 2008 or something like that, maybe before. Don't quote me on that. But apparently their modern kits are in metric, which is great. But this RC10 four-wheel drive is a combination of metric and standard. Like, I don't know. And as a builder, like, I've got a vintage RC10. To me, metric or standard hardware doesn't, having a little bit of metric in there, I think just made it more confusing, more of a confusing build for people.
Yeah.
If they wanted to go all metric, go all metric. If you want to go all standard, go all standard. But the mishmash it just kind of, it's confusing. It just doesn't have continuity. Same with the bolts, the nuts for the wheels. Somebody left a comment because I said, I mean, I look at them, they look like they're, somebody bought some nuts off the parts bin at Home Depot. Like, they just don't even look like anything I've seen on an RC car before. And there's no nylon in there. It's not like a nylon lock nut. And I made a comment about that, and somebody said that that's what they use on race cars now. Okay, so, and listen, I'm not a pro racer, so maybe my information and my expectations are out of touch a little bit. But I don't know. They look hideous. And then in my mind, because I remember building my RC10T back in the 90s, Team Associated gives you these kind of tri-spoke. It's like a nylon, same white nylon that they use for all the body parts, but it's like a nylon wheel nut that you can thread on, and it looks kind of cool. It's a 3-spoke thing. So I thought I'll use those instead, because this will be more of a shelfer anyway, and I'll paint them up to match my body colors. It'll look super cool. But they give you 4 in total. 2 fit the axles and 2 don't fit. You don't even get a matching set. So, like, you put in the effort to give us the tri-spoke wheel hubs, the wheel locks, but they don't fit. Like, why wouldn't you just put four of the size that fit? I just don't get it. And it was the whole build was a bunch of that, of a bunch of head scratching moments of, okay, you decided to do that. Okay, cool, man. I mean, I wouldn't have done it that way, but cool, you
You know
did.
what, buddy? I think kudos to you for doing a honest review and highlighting the frustrations that you had with it rather than just saying, "Oh, isn't this awesome? Isn't this brilliant?" You know, you went out there and you built it and you spent time and money on it and you told people the facts. And I think that's great. I think that's what we should be doing, giving our honest opinion on these things so people can make their own mind up.
100%. And you said something important that I want to reiterate real quick, and that was that I spent my money on it because I did have a few people leaving comments like, hey man, you're a dick. You get this expensive car for free and now you're ripping on it. It was not free. I paid for it with my own money. I made it clear in the video that I paid for it. And if I could reiterate again, I did pay for it. So I'm not. I actually edited out a section of that video where I went on and saying like I'm not in the business of trying to bring down any RC company or anyone that I'm reviewing. People that have followed my channel know me. Like I'm a very kind of like I feed off the good vibes in life. I don't feed off the negative.
Yeah,
So I try to bring out the best of everything that I review on my channel. You're not going to see me get in the weeds a whole heck of a lot. And I did get into the weeds on that one quite a bit because it was just a really frustrating build. It fought me the whole time. I mean, it shouldn't take you 3-4 days to build a two-wheel drive or a four-wheel drive buggy, but it did. Um, so we got into the weeds a bit on that one. But again, it was my review, my money. I bought it. That was my experience. And I think a lot of people share it. And maybe the racers are accustomed to that and they're okay with it, then that's also great too. That's one of the best things about this hobby, isn't it? There's a car for everybody, an experience for everybody.
absolutely. And talking about experiences for everybody, perhaps we can try and debate who on earth the RC10 6x6 truck is going to be for.
What do you think? Who do you think it's for?
Well, it's not for me. I can tell you that for free. I saw that thing come out, and I was like, "Wow, that's a bit zany. That's a bit out there." And then I looked under the hood and saw how they'd used. It looks like they've used like parts of the RC10 and hybrided it up into this truck. And I thought, well, that's going to be unique. But then I reflected on your RC10 four-wheel drive experience, and I thought, I wonder how many prototyping problems are going to be involved in that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my experience was very similar. Although I will say, when I first saw it, the first teaser video that dropped, I loved it. I thought it was so cool and just something different. And I was so happy to see Associated kind of breaking away from, let's say another green pan RC10 like that. I'm still scratching my head on that one. But it was nice to see them come up with something fresh, although it is kind of a Frankenstein of a lot of old chassis and a lot of old parts with some new. But I was happy to see it. I actually liked it. I reached out to my Eliminator RC, the guys that I order most of my stuff from, and I said, when you getting them, I want one. And then I built my RC10 four-wheel drive, and I called Eliminator RC right back and said, cancel my pre-order on that 6x6. Because I like you, I think we share a similarity in the sense of like we're both very busy people. I like to sit down. I find building kits very therapeutic. It's kind of my zen time, if you will. And the four-wheel drive RC10 was not zen at all. It was frustrating, and it wasn't the experience for me. And then as I read through the comments in my own video of the 6x6 release, a lot of people were saying, hey, it's the Apex chassis, it's these parts. The real are associated gurus that know what they're looking at and talking about, or hey, it's this part. No. And I kind of did the math on it real quick. I'm like, this is another Frankenstein car. I'm just
Yeah.
not ready for that right now in my life. I don't need another one right now. So I'll let somebody else review it, and hopefully it's a home run, and maybe I'll get one. But it's low on my list.
I also think that the timing, I mean, it's felt like they've been stacking it up sort of week on week, month on month. I mean, they've been having an awful lot of releases, and they're not cheap kits. And I think maybe they just got to give people that bit of time to say, take a deep breath. Right, I'm ready to go back in and have another, team associated experience now. I don't know. I'm not passionate about them in the same way that I am about Tamiya. So I don't look at it and go, oh, I've got to collect that, I've got to collect this, I've got to collect that. I do think it's great that they're trying something different. I did think when I first saw it that it looks cool. But then when they lifted the hood off and I just saw what was underneath, I thought, that's gonna be another interesting build experience for people. And maybe what they've got to do is just do something completely new and completely different rather than keep rehashing things on the RC10 platform. But
Yeah.
the other, well, it's not really RC news because there's no news. But I was looking to try and see what Kyosho has been up to in the start of 2025. And I realized they haven't been up to a great deal of much. They've had this drift car that's come out on the Phaser platform, and they've got
Yeah.
a new race buggy of some sort that they've put out, and that's about it. There's no additions to the Legendary series, which surprised me. I thought they might have put something out at the start of the year. I mean, I just want my Raider. Just give me a Raider Remy, please,
Yeah.
because I could do one of those in a box for me to build up from scratch rather than having to, you know, wrestle a whole load of secondhand parts that I've collected and amassed over time off eBay and various other sources. But I'd love to get one of those in the box again. But they've been very quiet, Kyosho, and it surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, they have been quiet right from the Nuremberg Toy Fair, weren't they? I mean, there wasn't much going on there. I think they really highlighted the new, what is it, the Toyota Torino
Mm.
AE86 drift chassis on the Phaser chassis, which looks like a really cool chassis. And I like the fact that you touched on something earlier saying Legendary series, and that kind of got me thinking of their ultra scale bodies. And I think one thing they've done, they've got a lot of these phasers with these ultra scale bodies, but so many of them have body posts. And I think that
Yes.
really takes away from the look of some of those beautiful bodies. So with the new Torino, they've got no body post in it, which I think, it tells me they're listening to the fans and kind of, they're listening to what's happening in the hobby as we get away from body posts. So it's a cool looking chassis. I've heard a lot of good things about it. I'm not a huge drift guy, so I don't know if I'm going to, invest the money into getting one to test it out for myself. But that's kind of it. Like I said, they've got I think it's the MP9 race buggy or something like that that's also been revitalized. But yeah, pretty quiet out of the Kyosho camp these days. And I don't really know why, because everybody else is just, associated putting out broccoli RC10s and selling them. You know, why isn't Kyosho coming out with, like I said, the Raider or just other Legendary series cars? Because they sell like hotcakes. They're beautiful. We love them. We want them. So let's keep them coming.
And they're brilliant. People really have a good time with them. You recently built a Javelin. I've done an Ultima and an Optima Mid, and they are such lovely kits to build, and they are just super high end, and it all works. It all goes together beautifully, and it does exactly what you want it to do. And they are slightly modernized as well. Those Legendary series have had just the slightest of tweaks done to them to make them more modern and handle modern motors and modern electronics. So it is a shame that we haven't seen another one for probably about 6 months or so, maybe more than that now. Was it the Turbo Optima? No, Optima Pro, wasn't it, the last one that came out? I
Yeah,
can't remember now.
yeah, and I'd say we're probably pushing a year with that one.
Yeah, we probably are now. So yeah, if anyone from Kyosho is listening, let's have a Raider, please, just for me. Don't care about anybody
Yeah,
else. Just give me one.
the Outlaw Ultima. That two-wheel drive stadium truck is one that
Yeah.
um, I think it's so underrated. That was I think my third ever hobby grade RC car. I do have one in my collection now, but I don't drive it because it's just old, and it's, I don't know, I just, you don't see a lot of them. You don't see a lot of spare parts, so I just don't want to break anything on it. So I just kind of stare at it and love it just for how it looks.
Well,
But it would be great to see these re-released as well, just so we can get our hands on some more
you
parts.
know that I still run my Raider, and I still drive. I don't drive the original ones. I still have that. My original one from the 1990. I still have that with an old MSC in. I don't drive that because I am worried that I'm going to break it, and just for sentimental values, I wouldn't want to break anything on that now. But I have one I rebuilt, and I am surprised at how well the plastics on those hold up, because the the plastic tubs don't seem to ever break. The shocks are still serviceable, and you can still make them work. Even though they're friction dampers, you can still make them work. The only thing is the steering mechanism, and the servo saver that they use is a bit finicky, and it doesn't really work particularly well today in today's terms. There's a lot of steering issues with the Raider, but they hold up so well for a car that was developed, what, 35 years ago?
Yeah.
And I just would love to see that slight modernization of that platform and put it back out there again for us, because I would lap up that. I'd buy two kits straight away. one for a rainy day and one to build, and just to have the spare parts again, just to be able to pick up some of the spare parts for the gearboxes would be beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
So come on.
Yeah, I've got one actually in my collection as well, a Kyosho Raider, and it is absolutely mint, Craig. You would drool if you saw it. It's I got it a couple of years ago in a trade locally, and my wife was done with an old crawler of hers, so we traded the crawler for the Kyosho, and it's sitting pretty up on the shelf. And I like, again, like you said, some of the plastics, it looks good, but I just don't trust it, so I don't want to break it. I am running. It still has the factory manual speed controller in it, which, as you know, they can
Yeah,
they
they
can do
can
wacky
stick.
things
They can
sometimes.
stick. See you later.
Yeah, we've all
So
had a
I've
runaway or
been
two.
I've been collecting up sort of when I see them, I've been collecting up new parts for the Raider in bags, and I've got a couple of new gearboxes. I've got a new chassis plate. I've got a brand new diff and gear set. I'm yet to find the arms and the bumper, but I'm slowly collecting, enough bits and pieces that I could do a new build of a. I've got a spare body set that it's like it's a reconditioned body, a reproduction body set. But I've got original decals from the 1980s to put on it, and I've just been, slowly amassing this collection of parts. And one day, I'm going to build, if they don't ever re-rear, I'm going to build a brand new Raider from all these parts I've collected, hopefully, and then just stick it on the shelf. Well, I don't have many shelfers, but that would be one that would go on the shelf and never be driven, just in all of its glory. But just a few more bits and pieces needed.
I'll keep my eyes peeled for you, buddy. If anything comes
Cheers,
up, I'll
dude.
let you know.
Yeah. Until then, Kyosho, come on, just re-rear it for me, please.
Yeah, give us some more cars. We'll buy them. Keep them coming.
So we've done over an hour again. Look at that. How good are we?
Time flies when you're having fun, Craig.
Exactly. So all that's left for me to do is ask you what is going on at Poor Boys RC in the next couple of weeks. What are you up to?
What is going on? Well, right now, sitting in front of me, I'm currently assembling a TT01E.
Oof.
And I've got the Bugaira. I probably mispronouncing that, but the Boogira Fat Fox body on it. So I'm well into painting the body at this point, and I haven't even started assembling the chassis yet. So that's my task for today.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Lots of decals on that one. There's lots of sponsor decals, isn't there, that go on that one?
There's so many. Like the sheet is just, it's crazy. And there's two or three supplements in the manual, because like the body itself is like, it's a manual for just putting the stickers on it. So it's like, yeah, pretty basic chassis, but I think the body is going to take more time than the entire four-wheel drive chassis will. But that's going on right now, and I'm excited about this because the guys that I started racing with at Souk Scale Racing run these in a spec class at the end of the night, every night. And
Brilliant.
this is a class we tried getting going about 10, 12 years ago with another club I used to race with, and it just never took off. So here it is, finally 10, 12 years down the line, and I get to do it. So I'm really excited about this. I've also got some other goodies for Bill. I got a Kyosho Dune Master here that I've got to assemble and get out. And then I've got some other stuff to review here, some different stuff, some battery chargers, and like kind of like an engine sound, like simulated engine sound system.
Nice.
Yeah, really cool, from a company called GT Power. So it just came in last week.
Super interested to see how that goes, because I am looking for one of those for a build project that I've got coming up. So I'm going to keep an eye on that and see how that goes.
Oh, perfect. I'll keep you posted. Yeah, because I'll get to it hopefully in the next week or two here.
So I want one of those, and I want one of those little systems that puts the engine exhaust out the back as well.
Oh yeah.
So I've got a Blitzer Beetle that I want to do like a sort of like a proper. Do you remember the After Hours Mechanic? And he used to do YouTube videos where he would build like a time lapse build, and he would go to like ultra level just in detail. He would spec the chassis up. He would do a beautiful build of the body shell, and
yeah, he has crazy attention to detail.
Just incredible. I can't replicate that in any way, shape, or form. But I do want to have a go, because the Blitzer Beetle just looks so cool. And your body shell inspired me a little bit. I'm not going to do anywhere near that level of finish, but I'm going to do it metallic black, and I'm going to get some custom decals for it because I've got an idea in my head. But I also want an engine module to make the sound. And then I want the exhaust coming out the back with the sort of the water vapor that you can get to come out the back. So that's currently in my head. So I'll be interested to see how that goes.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'll definitely keep you posted then. I'm looking forward to this thing.
Cool, man. So you got some good stuff coming up. What am I doing? I'm doing the body shell for the Sandviper, which I'm doing in metallic orange instead of the yellow. And I've also realized those decals on the Sandviper are pre-cut. I love pre-cut
Lovely.
decals. So I've got that going on. I've got obviously the running footage to do with the two of them out on the track. So that's hopefully going to happen in the next couple of weeks. And I am hoping to get another DT04 and do the long wheelbase so I can do that against the DT03. And that will keep me out of trouble, as well as getting rid of molehills and getting the track ready for the summer. Because, as I said last time, that takes a lot of work, and there's still lots of stuff still to do up there.
Yeah, that's got to be quite the undertaking you got to do every year after the moles do their thing, and then just track maintenance in itself it's a lot of work.
Well, the last 3 years, Phil, I've changed the layout every year. And this year will be the first one that I haven't changed the layout. I left it all down over the winter. The only thing that's happened is the jump's gone because the rain washed it all away. So I'm still debating as to whether I put the jump back in or whether I just have a really nice long straightaway this year that gives the cars opportunity to stretch the legs a little bit. And it's just something different. So I can't quite decide what to do yet. But that's what the whole spring's for. It's for working out what works best and then ready for the summer series.
Yeah, there you go. Inspiration will strike.
It always does. It comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's right.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thank you very much for joining Phil and I on our hour-long podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've got any interesting topics that you would like to hear us discuss on the chat on the podcast, get in touch. Leave us a comment, contact me through the YouTube channel, and let us know what you'd like us to talk about. Phil, thank you very much for joining me again. I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome. Lots of fun, as usual. Thank you.
And make sure you get over to Phil's channel, check him out, give him a like and subscribe, and ring his bell and all that sort of stuff.
Ring the bell, press the buttons. That'd be amazing. Thanks, guys.
And thank you from me, and thank you from Phil. I will see you all again in about a month's time. Cheers.
Bye, everybody.
Bye now.